Bill Gates, from computer kid to world helper, a complete life story for a 1 to a 2 English learners, podcast script. Introduction. Who is Bill Gates? Hello everyone. Today we will talk about one of the most famous people in the world, Bill Gates. Do you know who he is? Bill Gates is a very rich and important man. He started the company Microsoft. He also helps poor people around the world. Bill Gates was born in 1955. That was almost 70 years ago. He is from Seattle in the United States. Seattle is a big city with many mountains and trees. It rains a lot there. Why is Bill Gates famous? He is famous because he helped create the computer world we know today. Before Bill Gates, computers were very big and difficult to use. He made computers smaller and easier for everyone. But Bill Gates is not just about computers anymore. Now he spends his time and money helping people. He fights diseases, helps poor children go to school, and works to make the world better. In this story, we will learn about Bill Gates from when he was a young boy until today. We will see how a smart kid became one of the richest people in the world, and we will learn how he uses his money to help others. Are you ready to learn about Bill Gates? Let's start with his childhood. Chapter 1. Bill Gates as a child, 1955 to 1970. William Henry Gates III was born on October the 28th, 1955. That's his full name, but everyone calls him Bill. His father was William Gates II and his mother was Mary. Bill had 2 sisters, one older and one younger. Bill's family was not poor, but they were not super rich either. His father was a lawyer. A lawyer is someone who helps people with legal problems. His mother worked for charities. Charities are organizations that help people who need help. When Bill was young, he was very smart, but also very difficult. He did not like to follow rules. He argued with his parents a lot. His mother said he was challenging. That means he was hard to control. Bill was not good at sports. He was thin and not very tall, but he loved to read books. He read everything, encyclopedias, science books, and stories. He could read very fast and remember everything. When Bill was in elementary school, his parents were worried about him. He was bored in class because the lessons were too easy. He did not pay attention to his teachers. Sometimes he was rude to other students. His parents decided to send him to a private school. Private schools cost money, but they often have smaller classes and better teachers. The school was called a Lakeside School. This decision changed Bill's life forever. At Lakeside School, something amazing happened. The school bought a computer. In 1968, computers were very rare. Most schools did not have computers. Most people had never seen a computer. This computer was not like computers today. It was huge. It filled a whole room. It did not have a screen like our computers. Students had to type on a machine called a teletype. The computer was in another building, far away. The school connected to it through telephone lines. Bill was 13 years old when he first used this computer. He immediately fell in love with it. He spent hours and hours learning how to use it. He skipped sports. He skipped lunch. He even skipped classes to use the computer. Bill was not alone. There was another boy who also loved the computer. His name was Paul Allen. Paul was 2 years older than Bill, but they became best friends. They spent all their free time together, working on the computer. The school had to pay money every time students used the computer. It was very expensive. Bill and Paul used it so much that the school almost ran out of money. The teachers had to tell them to use it less. But Bill and Paul were very smart. They found a way to use the computer for free. They discovered that the computer company had problems with their system. Bill and Paul found these problems and told the company about them. In return, the company let them use the computer for free. This was the beginning of Bill Gates' computer career. He was only 13 years old, but he was already thinking like a businessman. Teenage years and first business, 1970 to 1975. As a teenager, Bill became more and more interested in computers. He and Paul Allen spent most of their time learning about programming. Programming means writing instructions for computers. In those days, learning programming was very difficult. There were no books for beginners. There were no YouTube videos or internet tutorials. Bill and Paul had to figure everything out by themselves. When Bill was 15 years old, he and Paul started their first business together. A business is a company that tries to make money. Their company was called Traf-O Data. This company made a machine that could count cars on roads. Why did they want to count cars? City governments needed to know how many cars used different roads. This helped them decide where to build new roads or fix old ones. Before Bill and Paul's machine, people had to count cars by hand. This took a long time and was boring work.
Their machine used a computer to count cars automatically. It was much faster and more accurate than people counting by hand. They sold this machine to cities around Seattle. Trafo Data made some money, but not very much. However, it taught Bill and Paul important lessons about business. They learned how to talk to customers, how to solve problems, and how to work together. At the same time, Bill was still in high school. His grades were very good, especially in math and science. His teachers expected him to go to a good university, but Bill was not like other students. While his classmates worried about homework and tests, Bill was thinking about computers and business. He could see that computers would become very important in the future. In 1973, when Bill was 18 years old, he graduated from high school. His parents wanted him to become a lawyer like his father. They thought the computer business was just a hobby for him. Bill agreed to go to university, but he chose to study mathematics and computer science, not law. He went to Harvard University. Harvard is one of the most famous universities in the world. It's very difficult to get accepted there. At Harvard, Bill was a good student, but he was not the best. He spent more time playing poker, a card game, and thinking about computers than studying. He still believed that computers would change the world. Paul Allen, meanwhile, got a job at a computer company. He moved to Boston near Harvard so he could be close to Bill. The two friends continued to work on computer projects together. In 1974, something happened that changed everything. A small company called MITS announced a new product. It was called the Altair 8800. This was one of the first personal computers. Before the Altair, all computers were huge and cost thousands of dollars. Only big companies and universities could afford them. But the Altair was different. It was small enough to fit on a desk, and it cost only $400. When Bill and Paul saw the Altair in a magazine, they knew this was their big chance. Personal computers would need software. Software means the programs that make computers work. Bill and Paul decided to write software for the Altair. There was just one problem. They didn't have an Altair computer. They were too expensive for students to buy. So Bill and Paul did something very clever. They wrote the software without having the actual computer. They used Harvard's big computer to pretend to be an Altair. This was very risky. If their software didn't work on the real Altair, they would be in big trouble. But Bill and Paul were confident in their programming skills. They contacted MITS and told them they had software for the Altair. The company was interested and invited them to come and demonstrate their software. Paul Allen flew to New Mexico, where MITS was located. He was very nervous. He had never actually tested their software on a real Altair. When he put the software into the Altair computer, would it work? It worked perfectly. MITS was impressed and wanted to buy their software. This was the moment that changed Bill Gates' life forever. Chapter 3. Starting Microsoft, 1975 to 1980. After their success with the Altair software, Bill and Paul decided to start a real computer company. In April 1975, they founded Microsoft. Bill was only 19 years old. The name Microsoft comes from two words, microcomputer and software. In 1975, small computers were called microcomputers. Software means computer programs. So Microsoft was a company that made programs for small computers. Bill's parents were not happy about this decision. They wanted him to finish university first. "What if the computer business doesn't work?" they asked. "You can always go back to school," Bill told them. But inside, he knew he would never go back. In the beginning, Microsoft was very small. Bill and Paul were the only employees. They worked in a tiny office in New Mexico, near the MITS company. They worked very hard, often 12 hours a day or more. Their first product was a programming language called BASIC. A programming language is like a human language, but for computers. BASIC was simple and easy to learn. This made it popular with people who were new to computers. As personal computers became more popular, more companies wanted to buy Microsoft's software. Bill was very good at business. He understood that software was more important than computer hardware. Hardware means the physical parts of a computer, the screen, the keyboard, the electronic parts inside. Many companies were making computer hardware, and they competed with each other. This made hardware prices go down. But software was different. If Microsoft made the best software for a type of computer, other companies couldn't easily copy it. This meant Microsoft could charge higher prices and make more money. Bill also made smart decisions about how to sell Microsoft's software. Instead of selling software to individual people, he focused on selling to computer companies. These companies would put Microsoft software on their computers and sell them together. By 1978, Microsoft had 25 employees and was making over $1 million per year. This was a huge success for a company that was only 3 years old. But Bill wanted more. He could see that personal computers would become very common. He wanted Microsoft to be the company that made software for all these computers. In 1979, Microsoft moved from New Mexico to Seattle, Washington. This was Bill's hometown. He wanted to be closer to his family, and Seattle was becoming an important city for technology companies. The move to Seattle was good for Microsoft. It was easier to hire smart programmers there. Seattle had good universities, and many students wanted to work for exciting technology companies. By 1980, Microsoft had grown to 40 employees. The company was making about $8 million per year. Bill Gates was only 25 years old, but he was already a millionaire. However, the biggest opportunity was still coming. In 1980, IBM contacted Microsoft. IBM was the largest computer company in the world. They wanted Microsoft's help with a new project, a personal computer for business use. This project would make Bill Gates one of the richest people in the world. Chapter 4. The IBM Deal and MS-DOS, 1980 to 1985. In 1980, IBM was the king of computers. They made huge computers that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Big companies and governments bought IBM computers for important work. But IBM saw that small, personal computers were becoming popular. Companies like Apple were selling personal computers to individuals and small businesses. IBM didn't want to miss this opportunity. IBM decided to make their own personal computer, but they wanted to do it quickly. Instead of creating everything themselves, they decided to buy parts from other companies. They would buy the computer chips from Intel, and they needed someone to provide the software. Someone at IBM heard about Microsoft and their software for personal computers. IBM contacted Bill Gates and asked if Microsoft could provide an operating system for their new computer. An operating system is the most important software on a computer. It controls everything: how the computer starts, how it manages files, how it runs other programs. Without an operating system, a computer cannot work. Bill Gates was very excited about this opportunity. IBM was huge and respected. If Microsoft could provide software for IBM computers, it would make Microsoft famous and successful. But there was a problem. Microsoft didn't have an operating system ready for IBM's computer. They had programming languages and other software, but not a complete operating system. Bill Gates could have told IBM the truth, that Microsoft needed time to create an operating system. But Bill was afraid IBM would find another company instead. So Bill Gates made a bold decision. He told IBM that Microsoft could provide an operating system even though they didn't have one yet. This was very risky. If Microsoft couldn't deliver the software on time, it would destroy their reputation. After IBM agreed to work with Microsoft, Bill and his team had to find a solution quickly. They learned about a small company in Seattle that had created an operating system called QDOS, Quick and Dirty Operating System. Microsoft bought QDOS for $50,000. Then they hired the programmer who created it and improved the software. They renamed it MS-DOS, Microsoft Disk Operating System. When IBM launched their personal computer in August 1981, it came with MS-DOS. The IBM PC, personal computer, was very successful. Companies and individuals bought thousands of them. But the most important part was not the success of the IBM PC itself, it was the deal that Bill Gates negotiated with IBM. Most companies in IBM's situation would have bought MS-DOS completely from Microsoft. This means IBM would own the software and Microsoft would get paid once. But Bill Gates negotiated a different deal. Microsoft would keep the ownership of MS-DOS. IBM could use it on their computers, but if other companies wanted to make computers similar to IBM's, they would have to buy MS-DOS directly from Microsoft. This turned out to be one of the smartest business decisions in history. Soon, many companies started making computers that were IBM compatible. This means they worked exactly like IBM computers and could run the same software. All of these clone computers needed MS-DOS, and they had to buy it from Microsoft. Every time someone bought an IBM-compatible computer, Microsoft made money. By 1983, MS-DOS was running on hundreds of thousands of computers. Microsoft was making millions of dollars every year just from this one product. Bill Gates realized that he had found the secret to success in the computer business. Instead of making computers, hardware, Microsoft would focus on making the software that ran on many different brands of computers. During this period, Microsoft grew very quickly. They hired hundreds of new employees. They moved to a larger office building in a town called Bellevue, near Seattle. Bill Gates was becoming famous. Magazines wrote articles about the young computer genius who had become rich by age 28. But Bill didn't let fame change him. He still worked long hours and focused on making Microsoft the best software company in the world. By 1985, Microsoft was making over $100 million per year. Bill Gates owned about 45% of the company, which made him worth about $45 million. He was only 30 years old. But even bigger success was coming. Bill Gates was working on a new type of software that would change how people used computers. It was called Windows. Windows and Becoming the Richest Person, 1985 to 1995. In the early 1980s, most people used computers by typing commands. If you wanted to open a file, you had to type something like openfilename.txt. If you wanted to see a list of files, you had to type dir. This was difficult for people who were not computer experts. But Bill Gates saw a better way. He visited Xerox, a company that made copying machines. Xerox had created an experimental computer that used pictures and symbols instead of text commands. You could point and click on small pictures, called icons, to tell the computer what to do. Apple Computer had also seen this idea and created a computer called the Lisa, and later the Macintosh, that used this graphical user interface, or GUI. But these Apple computers were expensive, about $2,500 each. Bill Gates wanted to bring this easy-to-use interface to all the millions of computers that ran MS-DOS. He decided to create a program called Windows that would make IBM-compatible computers as easy to use as Apple computers, but much cheaper. Creating Windows was not easy. It took Microsoft several years and hundreds of programmers. The first version of Windows, released in 1985, was not very good. It was slow and had many problems. Most people continued to use MS-DOS with text commands. But Bill Gates didn't give up. He knew that Windows was the future. Microsoft continued to improve Windows, making it faster and more reliable. In 1990, Microsoft released Windows 3.0. This version was much better. It was fast, stable, and easy to use. Suddenly, millions of people wanted Windows for their computers. Windows 3.0 was a huge success. Within 2 years, Microsoft sold over 10 million copies. Every copy cost about $100, so Microsoft made over $1 billion just from Windows. During this time, Microsoft went public. This means the company started selling shares, small pieces of ownership, to regular people who wanted to invest money. When a successful company goes public, the founders often become very rich because their shares become worth much more money. When Microsoft went public in 1986, Bill Gates owned about 45% of the company. The stock market valued Microsoft at $780 million, which made Bill Gates' shares worth about $350 million. At age 31, he was one of the richest people in America. But this was just the beginning. As Windows became more popular, Microsoft's stock price kept going up. By 1995, Microsoft was worth over $30 billion, and Bill Gates' shares were worth about $15 billion. In 1995, Forbes magazine announced that Bill Gates was the richest person in the world. He was only 40 years old. This same year, Microsoft released Windows 95, which became even more successful than previous versions. Windows 95 was so popular that people waited in long lines at computer stores to buy it. Microsoft sold 7 million copies in the first 5 weeks. But Bill Gates wasn't satisfied with just making Windows. He wanted Microsoft to create software for everything people did with computers. Microsoft made Word for writing documents, Excel for working with numbers, and PowerPoint for making presentations. Microsoft also started making software for businesses. They created programs to help companies manage their employees, track their money, and communicate with customers. By 1995, Microsoft had over 20,000 employees and offices in many countries around the world. The company was making over $6 billion per year. Bill Gates had achieved something amazing. He had taken a small company that started in a tiny office and turned it into the most valuable software company in the world. But in 1995, something new appeared that would challenge Microsoft's dominance: the Internet. The Internet Challenge and Personal Changes, 1995 to 2000. In the mid-1990s, most people had never heard of the Internet. Computers were mainly used for work, writing documents, creating spreadsheets, and storing information. Very few computers were connected to other computers. But some people could see that this was changing. The Internet would allow all computers to connect with each other. People could send messages instantly, share information, and even buy things without leaving their homes. At first, Bill Gates didn't think the Internet was very important. He believed that most people would continue to use their computers mainly for work, not for communication. This was one of the few times that Bill Gates was wrong about the future of technology. By 1995, it was clear that the Internet was going to change everything. Companies like Netscape created web browsers, programs that let people explore the Internet easily. Netscape's browser became very popular very quickly. Suddenly, everyone wanted to use the Internet. Bill Gates realized that Microsoft had made a mistake. If people spent most of their time using Internet browsers, they might not care about Windows as much. This could threaten Microsoft's most important product, so Microsoft decided to fight back. They created their own Internet browser called Internet Explorer. In 1995, they released Internet Explorer for free with Windows 95. This started what people called the browser wars. Netscape and Microsoft competed fiercely to make the best Internet browser. Microsoft had one big advantage. Every computer with Windows also got Internet Explorer for free. By 2000, Internet Explorer had won the browser wars. Most people used Internet Explorer to browse the Internet. This kept Windows important and protected Microsoft's business. But the browser wars caused problems for Microsoft. The US government said that Microsoft was being unfair to other companies. They said Microsoft was using their control over Windows to force people to use Internet Explorer. In 1998, the government sued Microsoft. This legal case lasted several years and cost Microsoft millions of dollars. Eventually, Microsoft had to agree to change some of their business practices. During this stressful period, Bill Gates made an important personal decision. In 1994, he married Melinda French, a woman who worked at Microsoft. Melinda was very smart and had studied computer science and business. Bill and Melinda's wedding was held on the Hawaiian island of Lanai. Bill actually rented the entire island for the weekend so they could have privacy. The wedding cost over $1 million. In 1996, Bill and Melinda had their first child, a daughter named Jennifer. Later, they had two more children, a son named Rory, born in 1999, and another daughter named Phoebe, born in 2002. Having a family changed Bill Gates' priorities. He was still working hard at Microsoft, but he also started thinking more about what he wanted to do with his enormous wealth. Bill and Melinda were both interested in helping other people. They saw that they had more money than they could ever spend on themselves. They decided to use their wealth to solve problems in the world. In 1994, they created the William H. Gates Foundation, later renamed the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. At first, this foundation was small and focused on education and libraries in the United States. But Bill and Melinda soon realized they could help with much bigger problems. They learned that millions of children around the world were dying from diseases that could be prevented or cured easily. They decided to focus their foundation on global health and development. By 2000, the Gates Foundation had over $16 billion to spend on helping people. This made it one of the largest charitable foundations in the world. At the same time, Microsoft continued to be very successful. Windows was running on over 90% of all personal computers. Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, was the most popular software for businesses and schools. By 2000, Bill Gates was worth over $60 billion, making him by far the richest person in the world. But he was starting to think less about making money and more about giving it away. 7. Focusing on charity and helping the world, 2000 to 2010. At the beginning of the 2000s, Bill Gates was at the peak of his business success. Microsoft was the most valuable technology company in the world, and Bill was the richest person on Earth. But Bill was also becoming more interested in using his wealth to help solve the world's biggest problems. He and his wife Melinda traveled to many poor countries and saw problems they had never imagined. In some countries, millions of children were dying from diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and AIDS. These diseases could be prevented or treated, but poor countries didn't have enough money for medicine or vaccines. Bill and Melinda were shocked to learn that over 10 million children died every year from preventable diseases. They decided that the Gates Foundation would focus on reducing this number. The Gates Foundation started funding research into new vaccines and medicines for diseases that mainly affected poor people. They also worked to distribute existing vaccines to children in developing countries. One of their biggest successes was with polio, a disease that can paralyze children. When the Gates Foundation started working on polio, about 350,000 children got the disease every year. By 2010, this number had dropped to less than 1,500.
Bill Gates also became interested in education problems in the United States. He noticed that many American high schools had very low graduation rates, especially schools in poor areas. The Gates Foundation spent billions of dollars trying to improve American education. They supported smaller schools, better teacher training, and new ways of measuring student progress. But education reform turned out to be more difficult than fighting diseases. After spending over $5 billion on education, the results were mixed. Some programs worked well, but others didn't make much difference. This taught Bill Gates an important lesson about charity work. Good intentions and lots of money are not always enough. You also need to understand complex social problems and work with local communities. Meanwhile, Bill was gradually reducing his role at Microsoft. In 2000, he stepped down as CEO and became chairman. A CEO runs the day-to-day operations of a company, while a chairman focuses on big picture strategy. Steve Ballmer, who had worked at Microsoft since 1980, became the new CEO. This allowed Bill to spend more time on the Gates Foundation while still being involved in Microsoft's major decisions. In 2006, Bill announced that he would transition away from full-time work at Microsoft by 2008. He wanted to dedicate most of his time to the foundation. This was a big decision. Microsoft had been Bill's life for over 30 years, but he felt that helping people through charity was more important than making more money for himself. The announcement surprised many people in the technology industry. Most successful business leaders continued working until they were much older. But Bill was only 51 and was choosing to focus on philanthropy, helping others, instead of business. During this transition period, Bill Gates received many awards for his charity work. In 2005, he and Melinda were named Persons of the Year by Time magazine, along with the rock star Bono, for their work fighting global poverty and disease. By 2008, the Gates Foundation had over $30 billion in assets, making it the largest charitable foundation in the world. It was spending about $3 billion per year on programs in health, education, and development. Bill Gates had successfully transformed himself from a technology businessman into one of the world's most influential philanthropists. But his biggest charitable commitment was still to come. Chapter 8, The Giving Pledge and Fighting Global Problems, 2010 to 2020. In 2010, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett launched The Giving Pledge, encouraging billionaires to give away most of their wealth. Bill and Melinda pledged 95%. By 2020, over 200 billionaires from 25 countries had signed, committing more than $500 billion. Gates called it one of his most important life decisions, believing the wealthy had a duty to address global problems. Throughout the 2010s, the Gates Foundation expanded its work in health, agriculture, financial services, and education. It helped reduce child mortality from 12 million in 1990 to about 5 million in 2019, and pushed polio to the brink of eradication, remaining only in Afghanistan and Pakistan by 2020. Gates retired from daily work at Microsoft in 2008, but stayed on as chairman until 2014. He became a leading global voice, publishing annual letters and warning in a 2015 TED Talk that the world was unprepared for pandemics, a warning confirmed by COVID-19. He also turned to climate change, writing How to Avoid a Climate Disaster and investing billions in clean energy. Despite donating over $50 billion, his fortune grew to $110 billion by 2020 due to Microsoft stock. That same year brought new challenges as both COVID-19 and personal issues reshaped his life. Chapter 9, COVID-19, Divorce and Recent Challenges, 2020 to Present. When COVID-19 began in 2020, Bill Gates became a leading voice because of his global health work and earlier warnings about pandemics. The Gates Foundation committed $1.75 billion to vaccines, treatments, and testing, while Gates explained the science in simple terms on TV and online. His visibility also made him a target for false conspiracy theories, bringing threats and frustration, but he continued supporting pandemic research and response. In May 2021, Bill and Melinda Gates announced their divorce after 27 years. Though unexpected, they agreed to keep co-chairing the foundation, while Melinda received $12.5 billion for her own initiatives. Reports linked the split partly to Bill's ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Despite personal challenges, Gates pressed on. In 2021, he published How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, emphasizing clean energy innovation. Through Breakthrough Energy, he invested in projects like advanced batteries, lab-grown meat, and carbon capture. In 2022, he released How to Prevent the Next Pandemic, proposing global systems to stop outbreaks early. Today, at 68, Gates remains one of the world's most influential philanthropists. The foundation spends $6 billion annually on health, education, and development, while he continues traveling, meeting leaders, and working on solutions to humanity's biggest challenges. Chapter 10: Bill Gates Today and His Legacy. As of 2024, Bill Gates is 68 years old and continues to be one of the most active philanthropists in the world. Even though he stepped away from Microsoft over 15 years ago, he remains deeply involved in trying to solve global problems through the Gates Foundation. Today, Bill Gates' net worth is estimated at about $130 billion, making him one of the 5 richest people in the world. However, he has already given away over $60 billion to charity and has pledged to give away 95% of his wealth during his lifetime or after his death. Current work and focus areas. The Gates Foundation now operates with an annual budget of over $8 billion and employs about 1,800 people around the world. Their main focus areas include global health, fighting diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS. Global development, helping poor countries improve agriculture and economic opportunities. Gender equality, supporting programs to empower women and girls. U.S. education, improving schools and increasing graduation rates. Emergency response, responding to crises like pandemics and natural disasters. Bill Gates spends most of his time reading research reports, meeting with scientists and experts, and traveling to see the foundation's work firsthand. He still reads about 50 books per year and takes detailed notes on everything he learns. Technology investments. While Bill no longer works at Microsoft, he continues to invest in new technologies that could help solve world problems. Through Breakthrough Energy, he has invested in companies developing better batteries for storing clean energy, new ways to make steel and cement without producing carbon emissions, plant-based and lab-grown meat alternatives, advanced nuclear reactors, technologies to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Climate change work. Bill Gates has become one of the world's most prominent advocates for action on climate change. He believes that wealthy countries must develop new clean technologies and then help poor countries adopt them. He argues that climate change is especially harmful to poor people because they have fewer resources to adapt to changing weather patterns. The Gates Foundation now spends about $1